Добрий день.
Hello. We welcome you here at this event, the opening of PITCHUA Plus competition. This is the USAID competition, which is held with the support of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. So as the result of the competition PITCHUA Plus, the projects of the Ukrainian producers of audiovisual content will get financial and consultation support for the creation of the socially important content. That is the content which highlights socially important problems in the society, the ways of their solution, provides the audience the information which helps busting wrong stereotypes and also promotes the confirmation of European values which help the integration of Ukraine to the European Union and in the victory with the war with Kremlin propaganda. The organizer is the USAID project, which has the name of TCA, Transformation Communications Activity. My name is Alexander Kleimanov, and I'm the head of creative content part in TCA project. A couple of words about what will take place during the opening of PITCHUA Plus today. After the greetings and welcome speeches from USAID, me and my colleagues from TCA will tell in details about the topic of this competition iteration, the story of Ukrainian power, about its rules and timeline. And after that, we will explain why the competition is expecting from the participants, the gender equality and social inclusion topics. At 4 p.m., we will be joined by Natalia Ligachova, chief editor of Detector Media, and she will tell how the Ukrainian TV audience preferences changed during the war. At 4:15, we'll have a short break. At 4:30 p.m., we'll be joined by Hollywood consultants of TCA, Adam Siegel and Josh Weinstock, and they will share experience of cooperation with the winners of PITCHUA, and also they will give their recommendations how to prepare the video pitch of the projects. At 5 p.m., the media colleague and my colleague in TCA, Vitaly Rudenki, will speak with the experts on long-term strategies, Yevgen Hlibovitsky, about the changes which are taking place because of the war with the Ukrainian society and the possible directions of its transformation. After that, the head of the Department of Land Reform of USAID on agrarian and development of agro, Sergei Kubach, will tell about the military stories of agrarians, which is also one of the examples of Ukrainian power. And the end will be the presentation about the administrative part of the competition. After that, we will answer your questions. Please leave your questions in the chat. If you hear the air raid alert in Kyiv, we'll have a 5-minute break for everyone who desires would reach the safe place. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mark Ellingstad, the head of USAID Office on Democracy and Governance. Please.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. As we think back to when the full-scale invasion began, many in the world thought that Ukraine would cease existing. That first very scary day of the invasion, USAID stopped all the ongoing PITCHUA projects. At that moment, it was hard to imagine how our partners, how our grantees could produce content when there were missiles flying around over their heads. And frankly, we didn't even know if people would have a chance to watch all these programs, series, and movies. But Ukraine didn't just put up a fight. It showed the world that it has a mature, resilient society, and that Ukrainians will not only resist at the front, but also continue living and working to keep Ukraine alive and thriving. Just several months after the Russians began their bloody war, most of our grantees told us that they were ready to resume. Because they were able to adapt to the new reality and use their projects to tell viewers in Ukraine and abroad about the powerful stories of people who were not giving up, who were facing up to new challenges, were doing the best they could to defend the values that Ukraine symbolized for them. The United States Agency for International Development is very proud to support yet another round of the PITCHUA competition, which will be calling for proposals of stories of Ukrainian strength. We believe it's important to help Ukraine's creative industry in this challenging time, to show Ukrainian and international viewers that Ukraine is strong, united, and that Ukrainians, despite differences, have a goal to defeat the Kremlin, successfully challenge its disinformation machine, reconstruct Ukraine, and continue reforming it towards full integration with the European Union, building up Ukraine's strength and diversity. I wish you all victory. God bless you. God bless Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, very much.
Since the very beginning, the competition of PITCHUA is taking place in the partnership of Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, and we are so grateful for that. Now I'm giving the floor to Mr. Taras Shevchenko, Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. From behalf of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, I'm personally really so happy that today we begin and announce publicly a new round of PITCHUA Plus. And I would like to emphasize that the key priorities and overall direction of our movement is so important. The social importance of the content is what is important for the ministry as well. The fact of support of media during such challenging times, when we all understand that the market has substantially decreased and any financial support is also important for survival of the market, for the market to develop and thrive, it is also a priority for us as well. Besides that, it is pleasant for us because this project is implemented by our long-time partner, together with TCA and USAID, so it is valuable for us as well. Gender equality is also one more argument why this competition is important. The Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, in particular, is responsible for the implementation of the strategy of communication of gender equality approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. That is why I think I already listed 5 arguments why it's important for us. So I do hope that the competition will get lots of wonderful applications and the strongest will prevail. Thank you. Thank you so much, Taras. As I've already told, the organizer of PITCHUA competition is the project of TCA. So what TCA is? TCA, Transformation Communications Activity, is the 6-year project which will take place till 2026, and it aims to provide partnership with the government of Ukraine, the private sector, the civil society, and strengthening of resilience of democratic institutions in Ukraine through innovative communicative initiatives which involve Ukrainians in the discussions of the process of reforming of the country on its way to European integration. For the implementation of this task, our project has 3 spheres: to provide to the USAID and its partners the confirmed data by the research, to provide communication campaigns. Within this sphere, we provide lots of deep and interesting researches. For instance, recently we've conducted the research of moods of the residents of Kherson region, which used to be under occupation and then were liberated. The second sphere is the improvement of quality and the increase of the volume of strategic communications about the advantages of reforms in Ukraine. And the third sphere is the expansion of the use of socially important content by the leaders of civil society and creative sector. Within the third sphere, we are conducting the grant competition of PITCHUA for the producers of audiovisual content, and we also have the events of educational platform where the international and Ukrainian experts are sharing practical experience and their pieces of advice with the Ukrainian producers and creative industry altogether. If you wish to get some news about the competition of PITCHUA and the educational platform, please register in the form, and the link to this form will now emerge in the Q&A part, question and answers part. You will have such a button on your screen, and there we will post all the useful links, and please join them and follow them. So if you'd like to get all the news about the competition and educational platform, please register in the Google Forms, and the link to this Google form you will find in the Q&A chapter. And also you will be able to mention in the form whether you'd like to get quarterly news bulletin of TCA project, because we are producing it in English, by the way. For those who are submitting their applications to these grants, it is important to understand about the source of money which this grant is being funded by. We are not a private foundation. We are the project which makes which is accessible thanks to the American taxpayers' money. Those who won in PITCHUA before, they know that the USAID IID logo has the inscription from the American people. That is why getting this money is regulated by really specific rules which are important to comply with. All of them can be found in RFA, the document which many of you already has read. And the link to this document can be found in the announcement about the beginning of the submission of applications for the competition at the Detector Media website about PITCHUA. We are happy to start the cooperation with Detector Media about the dissemination of information about the educational platform, the competition, and the TCA news. RFA is the main document which regulates all the rules and conditions of the competition of PITCHUA Plus. So our today's presentation is just an addition, a kind of illustration for this document. If somewhere you hear some of the differences with what you maybe already read in the document of RFA, RFA is the main document, so it will always be a priority. Today we will not announce any rules or conditions which are not written in RFA document. That is why before beginning the preparation to the submission of the application, you should definitely read RFA, and please do it very attentively and carefully. And now we will move to the topic of the competition, which we already announced, the stories of Ukrainian power and strength, and we would like to explain why exactly we've chosen such a topic and which projects we are expecting to get, well, the applications for which projects we are expecting to get under this topic. So, as it was already mentioned by Mark Ellingstad, the world was just overwhelmed by the, in fact, of the Ukrainians against Russian aggression. So what do we mean by stories of Ukrainian power? That is the power of the society, both usual people and institutions which hold the society together, which allow it to go on functioning on a permanent basis. Ukraine is not a perfect country, but Ukrainians value the opportunity of shaping the rules according to which they are living. Resilience, thanks to the skill to unite for the sake of the common objective in spite of any discrepancies. Ukrainians are feeling responsibility for their own fate. That is why they will never be beyond politics. Ukrainians believe in the opportunity of changes. That is why they're joining the implementation of reforms. Ukrainians understand the value of the election of leaders and control over power. And countering Kremlin propaganda and disinformation is the challenge within the country and abroad. We would like you to remember about these points when you prepare your applications. If you already read the document of RFA, then maybe you noticed that under the main topic of the story of Ukrainian power, we are providing several subtopics, and you can select several of them to highlight them in your applications. Now we will look through the list of these subtopics, so let us move to the next slide, please. Oh, by the way, before we are going to the list of the subtopics, I would like to mention which genres and formats are expected in the applications to this competition. The ones who have already taken part in the previous competitions of PITCHUA know that the competition is open, in fact, for any genres and any formats. We are taking the applications for the projects which are called non-scripted in the industry, and also scripted as well. Those could be TV shows for TV, for web. These could be the full-length feature films, and the grants of PITCHUA have already funded full-length feature films which were shown in the cinemas and will be shown soon. Those could be documentaries and documentary series, reality shows, animation series, and full-length animation. And the only restriction exists, we do not consider the short films, shorter than 40 minutes, both feature and documentary, because this format is very hard to disseminate to the wider audience. It is hard to post it on the TV channel, to show it, to broadcast, because one movie will just be lost if the person doesn't see it during the point when it was shown. It won't be shown again. That is why we are considering the formats which we have mentioned above, even if the full length of the content which you'd like to submit for the competition is 40 minutes, but not just one short movie, but, for instance, a series for YouTube, which will consist of short episodes or videos. This content will comply with the conditions. If it is a one-time up to 40 minutes film, either documentary or feature film, it will not comply with the conditions by formats which are submitted for consideration. Let us move to the following slide.
Now, a little bit about explaining what we mean by stories of Ukrainian strength. We made this topic is quite wide, so that everyone who would prepare their application would have much space to develop interesting ideas, so that we would not receive only 10 to 20 similar applications. The narrower you make the topic, the higher the chance that different creative teams would apply with the same content. So we have given you some ideas for the content, but you can give your own subtopic that would develop a story of Ukrainian strengths. What we expect to see in the content that you would prepare as a result of implementing your idea. That's the story of resilience of Ukrainians, but that should be stories of civilians, because there are many stories of warriors, and we have a lot of them already, but we need to hear more of resilient stories from civilians. Second, overcoming the war trauma. Next, returning to Ukraine from abroad and bringing back European experience. Overcoming false images of Ukraine that exist in the world. Ukrainians can share their strength and resilience. Horizontal relations in society that make Ukraine stronger. Reforms of recent years and months. Then freedom and democracy, free choice, and not a given. Time to look forward. Ukrainian roadmap. What differs Ukraine from the concept of Russian world? Returning into Ukraine from abroad and bringing European experience back. Overcoming false images. Ukrainians can share their strengths and resilience with the world. Ukraine adds strength to international organizations, and even in worst times, Ukrainians can see better future. We can move to the next slide, please. And this is very important. We encourage suggestions and ideas that not only talk about past and tragedies of today, but also talk about the future. Consider this as part of PITCHUA Plus competition. It's very hard to make short stories, to make the content that would be awarded at the end of the competition. And this content would be published online or in TV. I'm not talking about cinemas yet. And this material will come only in autumn of next year. And then movies could come even later. Of course, we hope to win by that time. And that's why we encourage you to look into the future in your content. If you take something that I suggested today, but if it's not as important 3 weeks from now, then it means 3 years from now it might be not important at all. So please consider how your applications would talk about Ukraine society in the future, where we are going, where we want to see all of us, our nation, in several years. And we hoped to see this future in applications that you would submit. Next slide, please. The questions we advise you to ask yourselves as you prepare your applications. Decide, is this application worth submitted? Why should someone spend several hours of their life to watch my project? Is it really worth the time of others? What would be new stories that my project will tell the audience? Maybe the story was told and retold. Very often we get applications that repeat the projects already implemented. And this factor of novelty is very important. So please take it into consideration. Will someone change their attitudes towards certain things or phenomena after they watch my material? That's very important. There are stereotypes about Ukraine, and it would be very good if the content you are preparing would help people see things in a new light. Maybe they would learn something new. Maybe they would change their opinion. But it would be very good that your content would reach those people and would impact them. That's a comprehensive issue. Not only the topic needs to be interesting, but also people who need their opinion changed and they are outside our target audience. How would they be able to watch your platform, your contents? Will you share it on just one platform, or will use multiple platforms? What are the tools to reach my goal? Please consider that your applications should explain production value of your contents. If you want just to sit at a desk and make some interviews, that's fine. but you should apply your content to some other competition. If you are applying for these grants right now, please think about special artistic tools that would make your content interesting to the audience, and why the audience should choose watching your content and not something else. Who are the audience and what attitudes we want to change to a stated issue. And as I told you before, we are not looking at primetime TV audience. It's not just about men and women. Please be detailed about your audience. For example, you would like to target people who live with psychological trauma as a result of the war, as they've been under occupation for a long time. They lost their family and friends in this war. You would like to reach them. Additional audience could be foreign viewers. But then, if you mention them, please explain how would you reach them with your content. That's the next point. How will my content reach my audience? And then, how my applications comply with the criteria of RFI assessment. And that would be the next slide. The criteria of assessment are the following: message of the concept, form, and approach, originality, novelty, relevance, impact. This category will have 50 out of 100 points of your assessment. Next point, next line, target audience and distribution. That's another 30 points. If you'd like to distribute your content through Ukrainian TV channels, it would be good for you to have some dialogue with them preliminarily to see if those channels are interested to show what you are going to prepare, or you need to amend something. If you have online platform, it might be simpler, but then consider the fact that your platform consists of your fans, and we would like you to prepare content that would not just reach your fans, they're already with you. We want you to find ways of reaching people outside your current area of influence, and you need to explain this in your application. Previous experience and the previous activity of the team, that would be 20 points of 100. We already have questioned whether debutante directors could apply. It's good, please. But please consider the fact that your previous experience would be considered as well. And not just for you, but the whole team that you have. So please explain that your organization is worthy of trusting the money from American taxpayers to implement this project. So, if all your team are novices, you have never applied before, you've never produced anything within the budget that you apply for, then the jury of the competition will have a big question whether you can complete this project, whether you can be trusted with this task. And then 10 bonus points could be awarded for comprehensive and realistic plan of implementing content to promote dialogue through events, discussion groups, demonstrations, and other innovative formats to include Ukrainians and international community members. The level of involvement and usage, as well as spread of the content of partners from the side of government and civil society. So, if you have plans of starting discussion groups around your content, how your content can be used by Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine to explain internationally the failures of Kremlin propaganda, you need to explain that your content would be valuable for that purpose. Next slide. About what you all want to hear, and that's amount of grants. Majority of grants would have 50 to 100,000 US dollars, and in unique cases, this amount can be increased to 200,000. How will financing be allocated? If your budget is below 200,000, and 200,000 is maximum that can be allocated only in unique situations. The majority of projects that would be approved would have smaller budget. If your full budget is under this amount, then you are likely to receive amount you need. If your project costs more than maximum amount of 200,000 TV series or full-length movie, then we know the budgets are higher. You can receive this amount, but you will need additional financing. It would be very good that you would explain at the time of application where you plan to attract this additional financing. Maybe you have some additional financing already, or you have commitments. If you do not have full amount, but your budget is 200,000 and more, we might allocate 50,000 first. You will make all the scripts. You will prepare as much as you can for this 50,000. You will be able to film a pilot, and then you will be able to find partners to co-finance this project. You need to remember that this TCA project works until 2026, and you want to complete the project of several million. And please consider that you need to complete your project before the end of TCA project. So you need to be very careful with limitations in amounts, and you need to submit realistic applications. Let's come to the next slide, please. How should one apply? The form of application is Google form that is given as a link at PITCHUA announcement. There is a link to request for application document and this Google form. Read RFA first, please, and prepare all the written materials that need to be submitted together with the form. You'll have that list. You'll have to record video pitch of the project, 5 minutes long. You can use all the tools you want. For that, there is small instruction, and we'll have some American advisors that will give you advice of how to prepare this pitch. Then you need to complete online application and give the link to the video pitch and RFA, Stories of Ukrainian Strengths. This application's deadline is end of the business day on 14th of August. And now I'd like to give the floor to my colleague, Tatiana Zichuk, that will that will tell you many other interesting things. Thank you, Alexander. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome you at PITCHUA Plus competition. Let's move to timeline. So, 14th of July, we have published our FA document, and I hope you all have already read it. If not, then go and read it as soon as we are complete with our webinar. All the answers are in RFA. You might not remember everything to start with, but I will tell you where you can ask questions if you don't understand something. So, our start was 14th of July, and today is 18th of July, official opening. And if someone was not able to join us here, you would be able to watch this webinar at PITCHUA website. We are applying, you are applying, and we're accepting applications until 14th of August. If you plan to apply, please don't wait until the last day, because if you're late by 5 minutes, you're late, you're not accepted. After the completion of all applications on the 31st of August, shortlist would be announced. On 5th through 8th of September, we'll have a workshop with our Hollywood advisors, and you will see how to prepare to the pitch, and then you will have 2 weeks to complete your ideas and applications, and 10th to 12th of October we'll have final pitching, and on 20th of October the winners will be announced. Next slide, please. Again, after today's event, we'll you will go and read RFAs, and you'll have many questions, and you can ask all your questions in written form, writing to the email you can see in front of you right now. And you will be able to get this email through PITCHUA Plus and RFA, and in our website, in this web page, you will hear all the questions and all the answers that come in. So if you ask a general question, we'll publish it anonymously. We don't write who made the question. We just show this as a question coming from a participant, because they might have a similar question and the answer to it. Next slide, please.
And what should you pay attention to? First of all, the companies which are affiliated within one media group or holding can submit one application only, one and only application. From your company or holding, you can apply with one application only. So if you have several ones, please look at our topics, weigh in within your company and team, and submit the best one which suits the rules and the topics. The next point, the consultants are actively taking part in all of the stages of the work. Those are our Hollywood consultants, script writers and producers. You need to understand that it's not just script doctoring, it's much wider and broader, it's vast, and they will stay with you from the beginning, the origin of your idea till the final product. This expertise is very expensive at the market, and in fact it's not that easy to be found at the Ukrainian market. So you will get it totally for free. The working language is English. Of course, we have communication in Ukrainian, but you need to remember that all the documents which you are submitting, as well as the script and the ready content, has to be in Ukrainian and English as well. The physical artifacts for milestones, well, not the easiest wording, but still it means a very simple thing. For all of your works, you need physical, something tangible. Everybody who has already taken part in the grant competitions before, they know what milestone is. The milestone is the stage of work with certain outcomes. After each stage of the work, you are submitting the outcomes, you are submitting the milestone, which has to be substantiated with the outcomes. If the first milestone means the script works, in the end of the first milestone, you are giving us the script. So it's very simple. Here, I'd like to thank you for your attention and to give the floor to my colleague, Olga, please. Yes, hello, thank you, Tatiana. Hello, dear colleagues. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, traditionally, for all of the participants of PITCHUA+, they will have access to doctoring from the international experts. The projects, after the first selection, will have their own consultant who will help them to work on these application, and then you will be able to submit it again for the assessment of the experts of Transformation Communications project. If you are becoming a finalist, those experts will be working with you for your content to get international level of quality and to get the platform to be shown in Ukraine. So it's important for us, for the content which you are producing and which is funded by this program, to reach a wider audience, especially the audience, as Alexander mentioned before, which would change the attitude to the problematics which is risen by your content. Next slide, please. I would like to drive your attention to the permanently accessible resources, our YouTube channel, which collected the materials of the last year openings of PITCHUA+ competitions and the workshops from the experts. We have the recordings of all of the workshops within the educational platform of PITCHUA. And today, let me remind you that at 4:30 p.m. Kyiv time, we'll meet with our American experts, Adam and Josh. Next slide, please. We are permanently conducting events within the educational platform, both separately and in the cooperation with our partners. This year, we already had 3 separate events and events with the cooperation of DocuDays Festival. Last year and during the previous years, we were working with Lviv Media Forum, Molodist Film Festival, and Kyiv Media Week. Our experts are inviting the guests and sharing interesting and useful materials. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us in Detector Media website in the chapter of special projects PITCHUA+, where we'll publish all the news about the competition and the events of educational platform. Next slide, please. Okay. We also have the following announcement. Please don't write to our personal emails or don't write private messages in our messages if you've got our phone numbers about PITCHUA+, because according to our policy, we don't have the right to answer private messages of such a nature. And the next slide. Thank you. This is the end of our presentation. I wish you success, and I'm giving the floor back to Alexander Kleimanov. I would like to add that please pay attention that the grant which the winners will get within the competition of PITCHUA, when this grant is paid, it will be paid gradually by the milestones, as it was already explained by Tatiana. But it means that we are paying only for the works which have been accomplished. We will not pay the money in advance or beforehand. You will not be able to get money support instantly after signing the grant contract. You will definitely need to submit some first artifacts or outcomes, and then you will get money for that. That is important to remember because, of course, for the beginning of the production, it is necessary to have already some money available. That is why please pay attention that as for this grant, the first payments will take place only after you submit the first milestone. And now I'd like to give the floor to my colleague, Timur Levchuk, who is our expert on issues of gender equality and social inclusion, and he will explain now why we are paying attention to that, and we ask you to pay attention to that as well when you are preparing your applications and also when you are already creating your projects. Timur? Yes, good day, everyone. We will be shown the presentation now, and then we will be able to start. Okay, then. So, for us, such notions as gender equality and social inclusion are very important for us, as well as their integration to your content. Next slide, please. Here I can only add that I will also be close to you during all the times. The ones who will get to the shortlist will be able to have the workshop on gender equality and social inclusion, and I will be accessible for any questions as well. I will not tell a lot because I can see that we're a bit out of time. What gender equality is the equality between men and women. And of course, I will tell you that according to the USAID policy on gender equality and participation inclusion of women, we also include gender diverse people. Those are transgender people, non-binary people. Please don't forget about that as well if your content somehow is connected with these topics. And you can also highlight that as well. Next slide, please. So, I would also like to drive your attention to the following point. When we are speaking about gender equality, don't take it literally, that it's only about what you're showing in the content. The very important thing is who your team is. If it is gender balanced, and you have both men and women, and you have nice ratio, and 50-50 at least, though sometimes it can be hard to achieve, this percentage could be lower, to create content which would popularize gender equality would be easier. And your team ideally should reflect what you would like to show. Next slide, please. And the next one, because I've already spoken about this one. As for GESI, this is the comprehensive approach. On the one hand, we focus on gender equality, on the other hand, on social inclusion. And also, I'd like to drive your attention to the fact that these topics are interconnected. That is, social inclusion foresees that we would like to give the floor to the people from the vulnerable groups. Those could be IDPs, those could be Crimean Tatars, those could be people with disabilities. Those groups are numerous. Those could be LGBT people, and those signs can be inherent also to women. So you can have the character, the protagonist, who can combine several signs. This is the intersection approach. You can use it as well. And I think that in the content which you are watching, you saw such examples before. The main principle of GESI, which is necessary to focus upon, is non-discrimination. That is, it is so important in your content not to allow the examples of discrimination and not to disseminate stereotypes and cliches. Next slide, please. Why it is important for us? As I already said, it is already in the USAID policies and in numerous policies as well. And it is our indicator as well, according to which we report as a donor. So it is important at all of the levels. Don't think that it's only our invention. It is written at all of the levels, at the level of the policies, at the level of our project and your projects as well. We're expecting to see the GESI component as well. Next slide, please. What we should avoid? Well, obviously, your content shouldn't be sterile, and we acknowledge that. But please try to avoid such points as drugs, tobacco, and smoking. Of course, it could be there, but in some minimal amount. I don't think that it would be okay that there is one of the movies where the actors are drinking throughout the whole film, and the whole plot is created about drinking. Of course, it's better to avoid such content. We shouldn't have discrimination, sexism, racism, intolerance in these projects, but I would like to add that there are some cases that it can be shown. When can it be shown? When you show the fact of discrimination or the fact of some sexism or racism or intolerance, you can show it. But it's important then to show the response, the reaction onto that, how we should respond it, how we should fight it. In this case, you can show it because you are providing the adequate response. there is a certain balance then. Violence also shouldn't be in your content. At least we are not willing to popularize violence. But again, if you're showing the problem of violence, but you're showing how to fight it, in this case, it can be taken place as well. Sexualization of the woman's image should be avoided as well. We should focus on different points, which how we can show a woman, not only her sexualization. And also one more point, it's better to avoid family planning topic, such points like abortions. It's better to avoid such topics as well. And a recommendation of the latest scripts which we saw before in our competitions, in the winners, politically engaged jokes. What do we mean? Of course, you can make jokes with political topics, but they need to be neutral, and they shouldn't be on someone's side of some separate political party or to ridicule certain political party or certain politicians. So please try to do them as neutral as possible or to avoid them as well. Next slide, please. One more point, as I already told before, of course, your content is important and it should be considered as well, but please do not forget what's important. If you represent the media holding, in some media holdings it already works. It's important that your company should have the policies on the prohibition of discrimination, on countering trafficking, on the policy on children's protection. For us, it is important for your actors to be protected as well, and other members of the team shouldn't be discriminated. And in case if such discrimination or harassment takes place, you should have adequate response, how you should react on that. The policy which allows you to have working mechanisms how to work with this problem or how not to allow it to happen. Next slide, please. And again, all of those policies, well, I think you will have the recording. They are accessible. You can read them through. These are the examples, the policies of USAID. You should take them as well, and they are nice examples which can be your foundation, or at least you can read them through to understand what those policies are. But again, at GESI workshops, we will speak about that in more details. Next slide, please. What we should be willing to achieve. Well, out of my previous words, it's obvious. It's important to take into account, or at least to try to, that our Ukrainian society is very diverse. I don't want you to have an impression that we're expecting from you that you will highlight some topics or problematics which is not inherent to Ukrainian society. It's not like that. Vice versa, we ask you to show the society which we have in Ukraine. And this is a very diverse society. For instance, in our country, there are lots of people with disabilities, and their number will increase. So, of course, it is important to show people with disabilities. This is just an example. You shouldn't do that in all of the projects, but this is the group which should be highlighted. We should give them the floor, and we should help them become visible. Why it is important? Because when we are showing people and groups which are invisible, we are normalizing them, and that is super important. Let me just about one of the examples why it is important. As you know, in Ukraine, there are lots of people with amputated limbs. Mostly those are servicemen and women. And there was such a story at one of the discussions. It was told by one of the soldiers that a child passed by and started to react in an unusual way, negatively, to point fingers. And of course, it led to really negative and inconvenient emotions. So that is why it is so important to show the people with disabilities in your content for Ukrainian society to get used, that we have such people, they have their own needs, and we are not forgetting about them. And the same way, it is important to show the representation of different cultures, national, ethnical minorities. Please focus on that as well. But let me add one more point. We shouldn't put into one product all of the topics. We are not expecting that. If you have the expertise, if you have the representation of these groups in your teams, focus on one topic. You shouldn't focus on all of the groups within one type of the content, because it would look, I would guess, very artificial. That is why we should better avoid such points. We should discover the needs of one group than to try to cover all of them. 2 or 3 is okay as well, but we shouldn't show the full range of all the vulnerable groups of Ukraine. Next slide, please. And also about representation, I mentioned that as well. It's important to have representation. Again, if you'd like to focus upon a certain group and you have the opportunity to have representatives of this group in your team, do that, because it will help you and allow you to highlight this topic with higher quality. This is the approach which is used by all the international world companies, and some of them even have such a requirement. When you, for instance, search for co-funding, or when you submit other projects or create commissioned projects, and these projects are relevant for a certain vulnerable group, it is logical to answer the question whether you have the representatives of this group in your team. So if you focus upon such a topic, try to find the representatives of this vulnerable group or experts from this vulnerable, complicated topic to be in your team as well. It will allow you to do that with higher quality. Next slide, please.
По гендерній рівності і різноманіттю ще відзначу, що важливо, якщо
Gender equality and diversity. If you are taking this topic, it's important for these people to be protagonists and not just a background. Next slide, please. I'm not sure we can launch this video. You might have seen this film, People of Color. And this is a reaction of teenagers to this film. So if you show some vulnerable groups, please remember that this is important for these people. Alexander told you about describing your target audience. That's important for GC policy. If you have this target group, then write it in your target audience, because it's important to involve this target audience if these people are portrayed at 4:30. You'll have a workshop, but we already have a recorded workshop by Adam Siegel and Glenn Mazar. Very interesting, important experience, and all the shortlisted candidates will have possibilities to participate in this workshop, and the video is at PITCHUA. This is it, and I tried to keep the timing. Thank you very much for this presentation. In essence, what we'd like to tell you is it's important for you to understand that TCA project is based on values, just like USAID is based on values, and this project has its tasks and this purpose. The money to support these content projects are allocated if applications comply with those values, with these goals. This is very important to remember, that you need to reflect this all in your application so that our expert would understand that content submitted and that would be produced at the end of your work would fulfill those goals. If you don't explain it, if you don't show it in your application, then it would not be clear why the grant should support production of your content. Now I'd like to invite Natalia Lihachova, chef, editor-in-chief of Detector Media, with whom we work at PITCHUA project, and we'll have news. And Mr. Talia, very happy to welcome you at the opening of PITCHUA Plus, the stories of Ukrainian strengths. Good afternoon. It is my joy as well to be here. We are partners at this project. It's really inspiring, and the goals are noble. We need to give good stories to our audience, as our social studies show. And I would like to spend a couple of minutes to explain the results of our studies in August last year. It's almost 1 year old, but I understand that tendencies that were demonstrated there now are even increased. We made 8 focus groups in several cities of Ukraine, Kyiv, Dnipro, Odessa, and various regions. And the main tendency was that people at the beginning of the war were seeking news, contents, socially important informational content. But then, that was at the beginning of the war. And when we did our study, many people responded that their attention to the news is quite stable. People want to know what's happening. They need news and they need current information, but they need more useful, inspiring information. And that's why, as our colleagues explained, how we need to demonstrate victories of vulnerable groups in society, to show their problems, but also to change attitudes in society towards them. It's important for our audience to be ready. And one more thing, sorry. I was very happy to hear that you should not demonstrate your political preferences because the audience is not ready. We see in Facebook and in other media increased critique of the government, but majority of the audience wants to see the projects and contents that would increase unity. Diversity in unity and unity in diversity. So I would advise you to focus on that. Another tendency we observe is about the fact that people want news and information, but in more entertaining, lighter manner. I can give you some examples. People named the shows I like and I don't like. Stories, Sternenko, YouTube channel, What's Wrong, Pitsvinky. It was unexpected, but many people in our audience, they watch accidental chats where our bloggers are trying to talk to Russians. I really cannot watch that. I cannot understand this content, but many people are watching it. And that's explained by the fact that they're interested to know why this happened. What is in the brain of those Russians that they would support Putin? They support aggression of Russia against Ukraine. So I would not advise PITCHUA contestants to promote these kind of random chats, but there is a lot of humor. And it's not to go into comedy. It's humor with discussion, insights into what's happening in the minds of people. I would think about that, such content, and how to make it in a different format, not random chat, but people would want to get answers for themselves about the reasons why this war happened. Of course, we have seen a huge increase of interest towards Ukrainian language and Ukrainian-focused content, and that would be for Odessa and Kharkiv. Many people said that they stopped watching Russian content, or almost stopped watching, and they increased their interest in the culture of Ukraine, stories of Ukrainian artists, history and culture, some peculiarities that they have never learned before. So I would invite you to look for heroes, but not just in modern times, the heroes of the past times. That would be very important for our current time, that would inspire our people for positive progress. Of course, many people responded and said that they need more patriotic content. They want to see examples that would inspire patriotism, inspire defending our motherland. This is very important for our people. I also would like to give you some examples of such cultural projects. Wilderness, Dikihashi, rationalism. These are very popular YouTube channels, and they're very interesting, as we were making this study. Lesya Mikityuk was not doing her show anymore, the one called Marshutka, minivan, but on bus route. But people are interested in similar content. How should I say this? Mr. Raj again. People hate Russian propaganda, and they want us to make fun of it, but they welcome Ukrainian propaganda. And that was quite surprising for us, because we're experts. We always stated that propaganda is bad. Propaganda is manipulation and sometimes misinformation, but or disinformation. But and people understand that propaganda covers something that is not very presentable and even manipulates. But people are welcoming propaganda that would strengthen our society today. They would welcome propaganda contents, of course, conditioned with the fact that manipulations should be limited, like propagating healthy life. Of course, that's information, but with clear purpose to help people improve their lifestyle. So people need such propaganda of Ukraine, and they're not criticizing it, especially this time of war. It's very important for understanding of what our people would like to see. And that's important for those who would be filming such project. If you put in very careful and balanced pro-Ukrainian propaganda, I think that will be very well received. If you don't go into manipulations. To complete, I'd like to say that we talk a lot to our regional partners. We ask them what content comes into regional media, and they all say people are going back to critique of the central government and local government. People want to understand what's happening really at the front line and in their communities. But they keep underlining that this should be transparent. If you want to make political or entertaining projects, you need to understand that this kind of criticism should be carefully measured, especially if you criticize Ukrainian situation, Ukrainian realities. We all different, and we all have problems, but as we explain the problems, we need to show the light at the end of the tunnel. We should not overload people because they're already very heavily burdened with dangerous and unpleasant reality. So that's all. If you have any questions, I would respond. Thank you very much. This is very good informational dopamine. We need to do something to feel better. I'm not sure if we'll able to satisfy all the needs within PITCHUA projects. Well, I understand that, but please bring more positive news than negative news. People are not welcoming negative news at this time because there is a lot of it already. So that's why we suggest let's look into the future, where we are going. Ukrainian past should be given only if it's inspiring for the future, and that's what we'd like to see in our applications. Colleagues, we'll make a short break until 16:30 Kyiv time, and Adam Siegel and Joshua Einsok will join us at that time, and they will share their experience of working with PITCHUA competition for several years, and they will tell you how to better prepare pitching your own project. I will remind you that together with your application, you will need to record 5-minute pitch, and finalists will make another pitch online. It would be broadcast live for a wide audience, and that would be very interesting, I'm sure. After that, we'll have very interesting discussion about the changes that happen in society due to the war and the responsibility for the content. Talia Rudensky, Evgen Rubovitsky will talk about this, and then we'll hear Sergei Kubok about land reform. Very interesting stories of Ukrainian agrarians that continue to live in occupation. They work, they support their family and other families. So stories of our agriculture producers would be very important. And then we'll have presentation of our representative of TCA to talk about administrative
Можемо повертатись. Сподіваюсь, що всі випили кави або чаю і знов з нами. З нами також...
So we can come back, and we are also joined by Adam Siegel and Josh Weinstock, Hollywood consultants who are working with the project of PITCHUA for already, well, since the very beginning of this project, so we really know them very well, and they know the Ukrainian audiovisual industry, the format of the competition, and the applications which are submitted, the drawbacks which could be seen in these applications. So they have useful recommendations how to prepare better for the pitching of your projects.
Nice to see you.
Hello.
Good morning. It's a very early morning for you, but thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you for being with PITCHUA for so many years. I hope
Yes, well,
this has been an interesting experience for you. I'll be pitching this over to you, but just introduce yourself so our participants today know better who you are, especially those who have never worked with you before and who have a chance to work with you in the future if they get a grant.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Alex. So my name's Adam Siegel. I've actually been with PITCHUA from the beginning. I started working, I can't believe it, in 2018, and have had a chance to work with a lot of different producers and writers and directors and executives at the different channels, and feel very connected, quite frankly, to my colleagues there. And yeah, so this is, I think, our number 5 pitch, and we're very happy to be here. Josh.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, my name's Josh Weinstock. I've been with PITCHUA since 2020 and have had the pleasure of working with writers, filmmakers, producers, executives on some pretty incredible projects that have come out of the program that, not just have been seen domestically, have been seen internationally. So it's been a wonderful program, and we're excited to see what great projects come out of this season. And we are excited to sort of roll up our sleeves and help you guys out. So, and Adam and I are just going to kind of run through briefly on some sort of broader points that hopefully will allow you guys to sort of take things into consideration as you're sort of thinking of what to apply and what to submit. And we're going to go into much more detail next month.
Yeah. So thanks, Josh. You set me up perfectly. What do we do here, right? We're a couple of guys from Hollywood, but both, Josh and I have actually gotten our hands, sort of dirty, if you will, and working on a bunch of different types of projects, both film and television, as well as web series and that sort of thing. So our role is essentially to support you, to support the projects in various ways, and really work with you throughout the entire process. So what that means is initially is to provide the feedback and advice. So that includes the creative input. And what, Josh and I are, we're experienced, we're coming, and we're hoping to, we bring knowledge around the best practices from our experiences working in Hollywood, both in terms of writing and producing. And, but, so we'll be coming in and sort of giving advice and thoughts about kind of, if you're trying to make this kind of movie, traditionally, this is kind of what you want to be thinking about, or that sort of thing. But the key point to know is that we're not here to tell you what to do. Our goal is really to understand what you're trying to do, and in that regard, maybe help you define what your project is, what your goals are, and then how do you creatively achieve that? So it's very much about finding what you're trying to say, what you want to achieve, and, really supporting you to do that. And now this support that we provide, like I said, there's the creative, there's the writing side, but then there's also the business and marketing side, right? So this includes really strategy for financing and really about the future production of the entire project. As has been explained, the way the grant works, there's this initial grant, which is really about setting up the project with creatively, really, and with some, visual presentation. Sometimes, we call it in Hollywood like a pilot presentation. It doesn't have to be a full pilot. But the real goal here, and that we will help you with, is really guiding you on what kind of pitch materials you'll need, and which are really essential in finding international partners. And also, quite frankly, obviously, because we're not Ukrainian, but we do give an international perspective. And just quite frankly, because of the situation now, this is really important. We the projects have to obviously speak to the domestic audience, but it is important to start thinking about the international audiences, quite frankly, because if you're going to find international partners, you need to sort of be, with them on that. So those are the sort of the two main areas that we will be sort of giving that support.
Yeah, and just to reemphasize what Adam said is we're not here to micromanage anything. We're here solely as sort of assets to you guys, to use us to sort of maximize the reach of your project, and both in terms of size and then also in terms of just creativity. So yeah, and we love it. So we don't mind rolling up our sleeves with you guys. The next part really is to talk about sort of like helping you prepare for the pitch. We, over the course of the last 2 years, have published many different sort of videos and conversations that sort of speak to just sort of from the pitch process to the creative process to story process. And we would really sort of encourage you guys to look ahead of time at these videos. They should be published. And specifically, there's a video called How to Perfect Your Pitch. And that is really sort of catered to really kind of crafting the project ahead of time and making sure that you guys are sort of taking everything in account that, we expect to hear and to listen to, and to sort of get a sense of your project in sort of the finite amount of time that you are given. But just to sort of rehash kind of like things to think about, important sort of story and project elements to really sort of hash into your document and hash into your visual presentation is, you want to make sure that you are being focused and clear about sort of the vision of the project, the format, so television, film, limited, is it a short, the world in which your story and show or film exists, the type of genre, and there's many different genres, and genres is really what sort of gives your story, your project, your identity. And then of course, we want to know about your characters, and this means your main characters. This doesn't mean a character that's going to show up for 2 minutes in the project and then never be seen again. This is really sort of focusing specifically on, your protagonist, who's your antagonist, and then a couple of sort of main supporting characters. always one of the important things, and we tend to find that the projects in PITCHUA that sort of seem to do best are the ones that really sort of understand who the audience is for, meaning age demographic, who is this a family project? Is this catered towards adolescents, younger people, teenagers, young adults? These are sort of the information we want to make sure that you guys are sort of talking about. Like it's much more difficult if you're going to say, hey, I want to do an animated series with a bunch of cuddly bears, and you're saying the age range is older adults, right? Like that there's a little bit of a disconnect for that. So we want to make sure that you know your audience. And one of the things that Adam and I are going to do that we had mentioned a couple minutes ago is we're going to do a much more in-depth sort of conversation ahead of the deadline, probably in a couple of weeks in August. And we're going to go through sort of rehashing some of these key points to really take into consideration for the pitch. That again, there's an hour and 40-minute video, but we're gonna sort of go through that again and sort of talk about it. The other thing that we want to do is with this sort of talk later on is if you guys have questions, specifically creative questions, specifically pitch questions, we want you to send those ahead of time, and Adam and I are going to sort of answer those the best we can in this conversation. I know there was mention of where to send these questions, but just to sort of reemphasize, it's strength@transformua.com. And again, send over any questions you guys might have, specifically to the pitch and specifically to some story questions, and we're going to try and answer those to the best we can. We also know that there is going to be a Google Doc with a link that is going to try and answer some sort of commonly asked questions as well, and that can be found on the Detector Media page.
And we'll and maybe ask if we have some videos very specifically about pitching, and because I know on there's a link here that goes to all the different videos. At some point, if we can, we'll post that in the Q&A if possible. But it's certainly there, and I really recommend you watch it. What Josh and I will do is we'll cover kind of a little bit of a review of that video, but we're not going to go into all the depth of it because the video is already there. Thank you, YouTube. So please watch it. That's going to be really, really helpful. And in the past, actually, Josh, I know you'll remember too. It's like we could tell the participants who had watched the video who really got it because they nailed it. They really understood kind of what that is, and that gets me to sort of what works, right? So Josh just said it. It's like the number one thing. It's the number one thing I do as a writer and producer when I'm working with people in Europe and in Hollywood is I have to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then ultimately how you're doing it. In this stage, the what and the why are the most important part, right? We're gonna get to the how at some point, and there is some business conversation around this, but definitely the first two are really important in a pitch. And there's always and I literally just had to do this in Budapest, right? I had to get up on stage, and we were in a live environment, but it's the same sort of thing where you have a very limited amount of time. So you really got to be thinking about sticking to your basics, what we call the elevator pitch. The term comes from literally if you're standing in an elevator with someone, how much time it takes before you get to the floor to tell your story. So it's you can't go into all the details. It's one of the hardest things, quite frankly, as a writer and as a producer to do, is what is the pitch? What's going to engage people? My go-to is always, what's the emotion? What's the core, right? Another thing that's really helpful is visuals, right? Evocative visuals that grab your attention. Video is ideal if you can't do video. Still images are good as well, but they really need to support and show us your vision, right? And in some cases, creatively, actually, by creating that, you begin to understand your vision better, right? Because just by working with visual aids, you start to go, oh, wait, this is really, this is cool. And then this is sort of not only going to help, your audience or your, in this case, jury or whoever is going to decide the project, but like I said, it'll help you. And then that gets me to what I think is very, very important. We're not interested and really don't come at this trying to impress us, trying to say magic words or look at the themes and go, oh yeah, here are the buzzwords you want us to say. What we are really looking for is we're looking for you. We're looking for the unique qualities that you're bringing to this project. These are, if anything that's happened in the last year and a half, the world is now seeing Ukraine, right? So we want to see you. We want to see what that is. And because these projects are about showing Ukraine, obviously to the domestic audience, which is our number one, priority, but also to the world. And so think about that. We want to see you. We want to see what is unique. We want to see the culture. We want to see all of those aspects that are true to who you are and to what the project is. Also, and this gets into sort of the not just the what, why, but the how. It's important to be realistic with the production and the budget. We highly recommend that you submit a budget. It shows us a lot, right? Just in all transparency, when I look at and evaluate projects, I look at the budget and I can tell immediately if they know what they're doing. So if you are not super experienced at a budget, you've got to bring on a partner. You've got to find a producer who does, because the budget's really, really important. It will show us that you may not have all the money or the resources, but you do have the ability, at least, to do it if you were to get that money. So that's a really important understanding. And then finally, which is also something that we will evaluate as the process goes, because we'll do a first round of selections, and then that'll be sort of the final selections will be pulled out of that. We're looking to see the flexibility of the creative process, right? It's and again, this isn't about us telling you must do this, or this is how it can only be done. It's really about understanding the collaborative process. Also the collaborative process within your team, right? We and sometimes, like we're sitting there watching and we're putting questions out there and we're seeing the different creative types not really understanding each other, right? And generally speaking, this is a collaborative art, right? So you need to have that ability, but also be really understanding and listen to what we're saying. We're not just saying it because this is what we believe or we think this is how it should be. We really are trying to help you. So we are looking for those who can sort of have that flexibility. And in the past, that does tend to be the people who often get chosen, because it's a sign that they're able. And again, it goes back to the how question. How do you achieve this? Well, if you're stubborn and you go, no, this is the only way I can do it. Well, that's not really a road to success, right? The key thing, any really good producer will know, there are many different roads to get there. And so understanding the flexibility and being able to be willing to explore that is really important.
And then talk about the PITCHUA theme, which I know was discussed earlier on this program, but obviously it's kept very general on purpose. And this year's upcoming theme is fantastic and obviously extremely relevant, and there's no shortage of stories of strength happening there. So the key to the making sure that the themes work is that we want to make sure it feels authentic. You know, Adam and I have been doing this long enough to know right away if something feels very manufactured, meaning that it doesn't feel organic to sort of the story you're telling. Basically, you're not going to be able to sort of trick us into doing a different project and then happen to just slap on a quick sort of thematic example of strength, right? We want to make sure that they go kind of hand in hand. And like I said, the good part is that there is no shortage of these stories. We want to make sure it's consistent. So I know there's a much more sort of detailed layout of what sort of can be included in strength, and how that might apply to projects. And then, in addition to just the PITCHUA theme, one of the key points that you and I always hit upon, and again, go to the videos. I know we've talked about themes in the past. Every great project has universal themes, and what we mean by this is what are sort of going to be the emotional elements that everyone can identify with, right? Is this a story of love? Is this a coming of age story? Is this a story about identity? These are going to be very important themes to incorporate in addition to the PITCHUA thing, because this is what's going to give your story reach, right? And it's going to be allowing people to, they might not understand specifically the story you're telling in terms of the details, but as long as you have sort of these universal themes to it, we're going to be able to lax onto that and to really understand like what you're trying to go for. So again, like, really think this through, because this is very important, and I guarantee this question will come up during your doctorate session if you make it to that round, and it's going to be important that you understand it, because if you don't understand it, it probably means you don't really have a good handle of the story yet.
Yeah, and I just to make the point, you're gonna you're coming here with the PITCHUA theme. We're going to know that. We know what the themes are. They're listed, right? And there's a lot of different variations. But that's more of the category, right? That's why you're here. What we're talking about in terms of this storytelling theme, I mean, when I talk about stakes, for example, we do this in our videos. We talk about the external stakes, the thing that's, happening to our heroes that they're fighting against, then the internal stakes, the psychological thing that's happening to our heroes. But the third level of stakes are the thematic stakes, right? And this is the philosophy of your film. This is what your film or TV show is about. And it, as Josh said, if you, and we're not asking you that you may change that, right? We're not saying you have to this is our theme, this is always going to be our theme, because in the creative process that will slightly change because you discover things, but you've got to have a clear idea at least where you're beginning, right? And so understanding your themes, we really, because quite frankly, the theme needs to be something different than what our listed theme is. We're really looking for the very specific theme to your story, right? So keep that in mind when you're expressing, your project to us. And then just generally, right? So look, the most important, and this is always hard, right? I always joke about, because across Europe, we do these contests Many people involved here who are watching will have either done that or know about these contests. There's a lot of like theories about how to win the contest. Some people just say if you're really emotional, okay, yeah, that can win or that can get people's attention. Still has to be a good story, as I like to think. But what one way to phrase it is really, we want to see your investment, your enthusiasm. We want to see that you really care, right? The emotion of it is really important. The excitement about it, whatever it is, right? Because these are different types of stories. But you know, Josh always says this, and I agree. It's like if you're not excited about the project, no one else is going to be, right? So it's going to be really a tell if you're sort of showing up there and it's like, yeah, well, you know, this is my idea, you know, whatever. That's just not going to work, right? So we really think it's important to come across in your pitch video as well as in the document. And often, you know, and we do this a lot of times, what's your personal statement? Why are you doing this? What is the personal connection? So this type of engagement, this type of enthusiasm is really important. And also, just to sort of reiterate, open to suggestions. You know, Josh and I will go anywhere with you, right? Josh and I continue to work with past projects. I'm working with projects. I'm talking about projects with regional broadcasters around Europe. So we're here, and you should take advantage of us, right? We very much care about the PITCHUA program. We really care about what's happening in Ukraine now, particularly what's happening in the film, the audio and visual industry, and the TV and film industry. You know, we've become friends with a lot of people there. So we care, and we are really here to help you at every step of the way. So just make sure you reach out to us, right? And then finally, obviously, and this will come more down the line, but we're really, it's really about communication. It's about being clear about things that you're having problems with, things that you don't understand, things that are coming up. Being just open and communicative is really, really important for success. So we really encourage you sort of on that level.
Adam, don't forget to say, be excited. I don't think you re-emphasize that enough.
Did I not say that enough? All right, so
what we said? Be excited, right?
Excited, yeah. Anyway, so that's about it. Obviously, we're just, as Josh said, we're really interested. The work I've seen, the work I've been exposed to and been able to sort of help with coming out of PITCHUA is extraordinary. I think this time in history is extraordinary, both for Ukraine and for the world. So this is our you know, it really is. It's a moment of memorializing. It's a moment of looking at what's happening at this time. And it's very, very interesting to us. At least, I mean, I can speak for Josh. We're very interested in what's going on. So we really are looking forward to it. So with that, I think, Alex, you're ready. If any questions or any other comments you want us to get into?
Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Josh. And thank you for your continuous involvement with PITCHUA. I think for our grantees, and even for the applicants who didn't win the grant, but still went through the doctoring sessions with you and other international experts, participating in PITCHUA, it's not just about getting the grant, the money, and producing content. It's also a learning experience, because by working with international experts, teams learn, producers learn, scriptwriters learn, directors learn, because there is so much input from international experts, and also what you do through the educational platform. So thank you very much. Я дуже раджу всім учасникам, які є тут сьогодні з нами, подивитися на відео, які
I really advise all our participants to watch our videos at PITCHUA, where Adam and Josh, they're speaking with international media experts on various topics that are very important for representatives of Ukrainian audiovisual industry. One of our former webinars were dedicated to how to find co-production, how to co-finance content, how to approach selling content to international broadcasters, and they were representing Norwegian channel NRK. So I advise you to go to all of these presentations and videos for previous PITCHUA iteration. You will find a lot of valuable advice. So the stories of Ukrainian strength. These are also stories of transforming Ukrainian society. Ukrainian society changes very fast, influenced by these tragic events of the war. What's happening in our society and where we are going? We asked our representative TCA media analyst Vitaly Rudenki to talk with Evgen Lubovitsky, expert on long-term strategies. I'm very happy that Vitaly and Eugene were able to join us today. I'm sure this would be very interesting discussion for all our participants. Thank you very much, Vitaly. Evgen, welcome. Good afternoon. Hello, hello, friends.
My name is Vitaly Rudenki. I'm responsible for the research, how we can interpret them and what they give us. So today, well, not close to me, but at least online close to me is Yevgen, who's an expert on long-term strategies. And I will make a short introduction, and Yevgen, I will have several questions for you. So we'll start this kind of interrogation. One of the sociological theories tell us that communication, any communication, is exchanging symbols. Someone is creating it, and the recipient watching this scene is interpreting it. This is how the communication is taking place. So I have the question where this interpretation is taken from. I would say from our common experience, the books we are reading, the media we're looking through, all of that is wonderfully working in the static situations. But when the war is taking place, and the war is a huge catalyst, which speeds up, accelerates whatever used to be before, then our dictionaries, with the help of which we interpret what we've seen, can become different, because different groups have the different speed of reflection. So here we have the need for synchronization. So if I asked you, as an expert on long-term strategies, what's that important has taken place in Ukraine during this year and a half? Or let me simplify. Just imagine a delegation from all Alpha Centauri came to you, and the world government gave you the mission to tell in a nutshell what Ukraine is. The experts don't know anything because they flew through the galaxies from Alpha Centauri. How would you answer this question? I would tell them that Ukraine is one of the interesting ways to get to know Earth, because we've got lots of things which are in the concentrated way. Well, whatever can be found in the concentrated way somewhere can be found here as well. So in Ukraine, we can find diversity of European civilization, substantial part of Asian civilizations. And if we look at Ukraine, then we can see the fantastic diversity and variety of approaches and variety of worldviews. So all of this difference, in spite of the distance between them, those different people who sometimes can hardly find common grounds which they could understand, belonging to different religions, having different stories, all of that is united by empathy. All of that is united by the capacity to feel.
Яка фактично може передавати біль, може передавати відчуття, почуття незалежно від того, наскільки ми всі різні. І хоч ці різниці мають значення, найбільше значення має, напевно, наша спроба.
It's a huge understanding. For us, it's important to understand where we came from during this last 100 years. It is as well as important as the last 300 or 400 years, but the last 100 years is important as well, because lots of formative trauma which was in the models of behavior were during the last 100 of years. And our capacity to get out of this trauma, our capacity to rethink ourselves and to not to inherit any of this legacy of the last 100 years, but to get over it, seems to me to be fantastic, even if we look in the global scale. So maybe we had a very hard, very complicated history, and this complicated history injured us, but made us stronger. It made us vulnerable, but simultaneously it made us strong. That much that from the perspective of lots of Western observers, and not only Western ones, we are beyond their measurement scale. So when they try to be in our shoes, in our boots, they don't understand how we can still act like this, where we can take this courage and capacity from. And I think it's important to explain it to ourselves, to synchronize ourselves beyond. Thank you. But what did the last year and a half of the war add to that? They added clarity, because we used to be in different bubbles where we had different views on, well, it seems to me, fundamental issues like what's good, what's evil, who is good, who is evil, and how we should behave with each other. And in lots of these bubbles, the strangers were closer than our relatives. In lots of these bubbles, we didn't have any memory. So people from really high official positions told me that it was a surprise to them that Russia could attack Ukraine. They said it after the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And I asked them, but did you study history of Ukraine? Did you read anything about history of Ukraine? And they told, yes, we did. We studied it, but in Soviet interpretation. So in their world, it was impossible. So whatever has taken place with us, we just synchronized with them. And now it's important for us to fixate this synchronization. It's important to see the borders, because in some time it will be easier for us as a society to communicate with the symbol system which you mentioned in the beginning. Got it. Let me add to strangers and relatives topic. I was once surprised by the history in the media when in the Crimean Tatar Islamic battalion there were the representatives of LGBT. And I was just thinking, which other country could permit that? Yes, sure. And now let me make it a bit narrower. Just imagine the people from Alpha Centauri who are in touch with you would like to create a huge movie about Ukraine. How do you think what they should reflect in this movie? The changes we mentioned above, or how they were important for the content creators? If we speak about big changes, here we narrow it down for the content makers, either media or video, whatever it is. What of those changes is extra important for those people? It seems to me what's important and what's complicated is the combination of two factors. The first factor is humanity, the factor of humanity. Ukraine, contemporary Ukraine, makes us reinvent what humanity is under new conditions. How we save each other, how we help each other, how we treat life of each other, how we feel pain, and how we become active when we don't have any activists left. One of the impressive stories which really impressed me is the story from north of Kiev region, when the civil activists left before Russians invaded the village, and in some time we saw new activists emerging. So different people appeared in the same roles, in the roles of the activists who left, the people who did not used to be active before. So this structure was renovated. This humanity and search of humanity, where it is systematically destroyed, it is very important part of Ukraine. And it's a totally universal story, I would say. This is the story which is understandable and comprehensible anywhere in the world. This is the story which we could use to communicate with different civilizations and so on. Another side is the Ukrainian part, because our search for humanity, according to our societal contract, cannot pose threat to our national identity. Though it is national identity of not all of the Ukrainians. There are lots of Ukrainians whose national identity is not Ukrainian. But speaking Ukrainian platform, which includes language, basic understanding of how Ukrainian culture is functioning. And this Ukrainian culture is also interesting and unexpected, because the factors which mostly should be the factors of traditions can also become the factors of modernization. For instance, let me name Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. It has been created by PITCHUA, and it was the educational institutions created by the Kyiv Metropolitan. It has been restored in 1991 and has become one of the leading educational institutions and the center of new ideas emerging. In other words, this church tradition gave power to something very secular, to something very scientific and academic. Ukrainian Catholic University is one of the most powerful modern Ukrainian universities, which was founded by Greek Catholic Church. So the idea that the centers of modern life can have the ones who are mostly defenders of tradition among their founders is an interesting, weird and fresh. Looking at the report from Maidan of Independence, when Berkut policemen could do whatever they wanted with the protesters, but they did not risk to get into any church. It's interesting. I don't want to fixate on the religious topic because there are lots of other points, but we could see this boom of popularity of Ukrainian visual culture, from embroidered shirts to graffiti, from cinema to some designs, music, and so on and so forth. So it is more inclusive than Ukrainian national ones, not only folklore, not only those frames which Russian system tried to put Ukrainian to. And we can see really interesting synthesis. Just look at the whole Ukrainian representation, which got high points or won at Eurovision, they were all based on folk and modernized, with the exception of Verka Serdyuchka, who unfortunately did not win then. But this combination is interesting, this Ukrainian character, which is reinventing itself. It makes this humanity totally impressive and exciting. Humanity as a core, as a sense. And this Ukrainian form is what's making the country interesting. It's what's making it the one which can tell a lot about the humanity. I don't think that Ukrainian story is marginal for the world. I'm sure it's not at the periphery. We can speak whether it is in the center or not, but at least it's not at the periphery. And I'm sure that for Alpha Centauri, it would be an interesting way to get to know us and humanity through us. Yevgen, could you tell, what do you think? Do Ukrainians look into the future or into the past more? Are the Ukrainians the people who think about the golden age, or they don't have golden age, but they are very, in fact, claiming? So they would like to have coffee of premium class close to their house, and they're dissatisfied if they don't have this coffee close to their houses. What do you think, where it is taken from? I think that our golden age is ahead of us. We used to have in some of the bubbles, if we speak about Ukraine and about the diversity of bubbles, we had different periods which could be named golden age. But our Ukrainian golden age has not taken place. It is in the future. And it is one of the reasons why I made a joke when we had those ideas, let us name our airport after this or that. I asked, are you sure that everything has already taken place? Because we have much more ahead of us than behind. Considering that we have a fantastically interesting history, considering that we don't know our history enough, because the substantial part of our heroes and our characters, the majority of our characters, was not able to share its experience as a legacy to the following generations, because they either tragically perished or they were taken away with the roots. So the Ukrainian, as an example, Ukrainian not Soviet literature is just several writers who left for the United States. And after World War II, they were in the literature form, they had the name of the fish tank in the sea. So that's very interesting how this branch of Ukrainian literature, not Soviet literature, looked like. Unfortunately, it was not inherited because no one could take this turn when they became older, when they stopped creating, so where they were just a historical phenomenon. We've got lots of stories which are not told enough from the past. But in Ukraine, we also have a huge focus on the future, which we already do not have in other countries, because their life is already comfortable. Everything already has taken place there, and we are still young and dynamic. The world is not enough for us. We would like to have anything, everything. And it is very important to register this moment. It can take place in the history of humanity for not that many times. It is not that frequent. So we have a privilege to live during these times. It's important to see it. It's important to register it, to fixate it on it, to find its signs. to document it. I would think that I would be sorry most of all to lose this freshness, to lose this wish to see ourselves better in the future, not to reproach that we were oppressed and that's why we are so poor and unhappy, and that we can have lower standards because of that, because nothing can be changed. No, Ukraine is about changing anything. Thank you. That was fantastic. Could you please tell in a nutshell, which recommendations would you give to our people who will be preparing and submitting their projects, thinking on their videos? What would you advise? How they should reflect on the experience of war? There is a theory that whatever is taking place with us is becoming our experience when we reflect on it. We do that on the kitchen or in the media or when we create the media. So how could you recommend to reflect on that? Well, in fact, if we'd like our worries to be transformed into experience, there should be reflection. There should take place the rethinking and acknowledgement of what has taken place, and this understanding. The media is playing a huge role in that, a gigantic role in that, because we can discuss that in the family where we have sincerity, where we have the opportunity to speak without any fear, to be ridiculed and mocked. But media has penetration, it has massive nature. That is why it is important for us to acknowledge and understand what that was and how that was. It's important to document. It's important to hear. It seems to me that, yes, documenting is important, and it is important to look at the people without prejudices, because it's easy to say, those are the people from province, they don't know anything, and those are just stupid. Every Ukrainian is important, every voice is important, and every feeling is real. And of course, it's important to make people speak, to pose a question in a proper way and timely. It is to feel if something was not said. Sometimes it can be even funny. Let me name an example. I once interviewed people who used to be on the occupied territory in the north of Ukraine. I'm taking the interview of the woman who told how the life looked like in the village where she used to live and so on. And I hear that she keeps something to herself. She's thinking whether she should speak out or not. And I'm telling her, tell me. And she said, you know, when our guys came to liberate us, I had such a feeling inside. It was so nice for me. I was never in love much more than then. Of course, it was a scientific and academic research interview. Those are the moments which allow us to understand what people lived through. On the other hand, the form is very important. Unfortunately, if you look at the videos of modern Ukrainian media, this is just an inaccurate picture, the lack of depth of the frame, and very often awful framing. Like in my picture, you can see my head is cut, you do not see air around me, you don't see the proper lighting, I'm looking somewhere in the depth, not onto you. So we are not doing that good enough when we document that. That is why in some time these videos are not interesting to rewatch, because aesthetically they are not relevant. In a year, in 2 or 3, they're losing their aesthetic value. That is why the form is very important. And it seems to me that what's important is to search for the story, to tell a story all the time, not just to collect impressive pictures, but to tell the story. And those stories, plus the accuracy of how they were done, plus the observation and the skill to see, the skill to notice some important detail, I think that just imagine that you are dealing with a wounded person and you try not to harm her anymore. It seems to me that it's important to approach Ukrainian material in this way as well, because when we are speaking especially about the war, it is still painful. At the book Arsenal, there used to be Ukrainian writers who are now in the armed forces of Ukraine, and they all said that so far they cannot write about the war because it's too close, it's too early, it's too painful. And it won't be literature, it will be just memoirs, some private block, but not a literature. And in the same way, I would like to appeal to you. In the video footage which will be created, formally speaking, we should have cinema with the capital C.
Дякую. Маю до тебе ще два питання, і маємо встигнути їх обговорити.
Thank you.
Дивись, я нагадаю тобі
I
історію
still have two more questions. I hope we can discuss them.
його ролі в Західній Європі після Другої світової війни.
I'd like
Того, як радянська влада, Радянський Союз спільно з союзниками перемогли
to
Німеччину.
tell you about the Second World War after the Soviet Union and Allies won over Germany. The right political views were condemned for a long time. The only proper view was we won and everything that is Soviet is okay. Everyone else was either the losing side or helping us win. Whether intentionally or not, Hollywood started filming the war movies with love, with normal life. So another aspect of life came into view, and so everything we do, everything we produce should add those dimensions, those shelves, those new views. So Ukrainian future or European, Eastern European future should be different. Now, what other dimensions or other shells should be added? We are full of emotions. We have societal emotions that are like eruption of volcano. You see how the majority of society responded to the fact that we are not receiving enough weapons, to the fact that we cannot get clear invitation to NATO, clear understanding that we'll be there. And that means that in order to be understood by the world, we can be offended, we can go into escalation, we can just go into our corner and slam the doors, go into our room, be offended and offend our partners, and that will cause more casualties. So we need to find a way to overcome our own resentment so that our achievements would not suffer from the fact that we suffer inside, that we should not accidentally destroy our own freedoms, democracy, freedom of speech, plurality of thoughts, respect to human rights. All those things should be preserved. It's important for us to preserve when we experience terrible anger, anger that destroys everything around. So I believe when we're talking about those shelves, And every time we need to see
фактично вони наскільки вони заповнені, що там в них
what we put there and how full are they. Maybe we have made some action to put cement where other things should be. Actually, what other things should be there? Because we have a group in our society that believes that West is leaving us to fight alone. We feel that we are under siege, and that's another step towards urban style politics. So what other things we should put on those shelves to avoid this kind of self-seclusion? We cannot be stronger or older than our resentment. Resentment can be energy for future action, but it should be rational action in the right direction. We need to keep cool mind even when blood boils. We need to see whether we are harming ourselves. Our nation is so diverse, and every one of us is representative of a minority for some criteria. So we cannot have a country with disrespect to rights of minority. Democracy is not just the rule of majority, it's balancing all the minority interests. And we cannot throw democracy and freedom of thought, freedom of opinion, and respect for human rights out the window. We need to preserve those freedoms, rethink those freedoms in process of going through critical, terrible suffering during the war. We cannot become a dragon as we fight dragon. We cannot become Russia, small Russia, ineffective Russia, or more effective Russia. We cannot become Russia. We need to preserve our freedoms, our democracy, our Western focus. With time, we'll be able to explain what we want to explain to those who don't understand, and their opinions will change. But we need to become a better version of ourselves, not a worse version of ourselves. If we bring worse version of ourselves into media, into communication, and pleasure of becoming worse, that will destroy all the achievements that we have had. Thank you, Yevhen. I think we ran out of time, and I really hope that our participants will be able to translate our philosophic discussion into practical discussion. But people who come to us are quite mature to understand, and we hope that our discussion today helped you as you think about the future project. Thank you, Yevhen, and now I'd like to give the floor back to Alex. Thank you, Vitalis. Thank you, Yevhen. This was very interesting discussion, that's true, and I hope that content producers are thinking about how their ideas are placed in wider context of development of Ukrainian society. It's very interesting and useful, and not just for today, but for when content is produced and when much later it will be watched. We understand the time we live in, and let's bring to our compatriots and to citizens of other countries very important information about our nation to open eyes on who we are and to help us understand who we are better. Thank you. The stories of Ukrainian strength. This is a topic of our grand competition PITCHUA Plus, and one of examples of this strength is the life and experience of Ukrainian agrarian producers that not just survive and take care of their own families, but they take care of us to put food on our table and to give food on the tables of many people abroad. But the destiny of those people who agrarians who are on occupied territory is still harder. Serhiy Kubach was not able to join this event, but we recorded his presentation a bit earlier, and this is a really amazing story. So we really advise those who are still thinking about what kind of application they should do to this competition. I hope you're inspired by this story, and you could talk to Serhiy Kubach directly. He consulted our projects before, and I invite you to look at our discussion with him. And after that, we'll have very interesting presentation from our grant team. You will hear important information, but more, you will hear answers to the questions already raised, and you'll be able to ask more. So now, presentation of Serhiy. Let me begin with the situations that happened at the beginning of the war at the line of fire. I will tell you that the story of specific agrarian communities, as we supported each other. I mean communities, these are people who live in specific territories. Amaze me, not just as they helped at the line of fire and they later they were occupied, but I'm amazed by help of those who were far from the front, but they came to help those who suffered. I'd like to start with telling about a large farming family in Konstantinovka community of Donetsk region when and we started shelling them, and their farm really suffered. They have 21 cows, and they came to community and community at Poltava, Sergeyevska village community. They invited them, this farming family, to come to their village in Cherkasy region. Then we helped evacuating them to our vehicles. Also were shelled, but we were able to get their trucks out and some of their property and their family, and we brought them into a farm in Cherkasy region. They gave them with pasture and equipment, and even gave them 200,000 hryvnias. Now they work for the community and they pay taxes in the community. It's amazing how people helped each other in a time of hurt. And we had this time of help, not just with eastern Ukraine, but people in the western Ukraine in Zakarpattia started gathering potatoes, sacks of potatoes and other vegetables, from house to house, and they sent this to communities that suffered in the east, suffered from the shelling. And as they were sending humanitarian aid from one part of Ukraine to the other, I don't mean international assistance. I mean that agrarians, just like other farmers, they were helping each other with what they could, and they were sending assistance to Cherokee community in Zaporizhia region, Yakimivska community, and others. Yakimivska community, it's now under occupation, but we created a hub in Zaporizhia to help our internally displaced persons that are at the front line, and they bring victory that way. They hope the territory will be deoccupied and they will come back, or they are getting ready to come back. And their internal strength is that they're helping each other, and they believe together that we will win. Ukraine will be victorious. Ukraine has future in the European Union. They continue working in the territory controlled by Ukraine, but they hope to come back. We have examples of many agrarians whose assets are in Kherson region. They're at the left bank, and they are still in business at the new territory, but they donate all their profits to Ukrainian military, so they would free up the occupied land. And I'd like to mention those farmers, Sergei Rybalko, Vladimir Peskov. If you remember, Sergei Rybalko was under occupation, and you could see his photos online. His tractors went to sow wheat, even though occupation was imminent. He was threatened, and he had to leave. He is on Ukraine-controlled territory, but the remaining of his company is still working, and he works hard to free that territory. We need to look at communities of Western Ukraine, Ternopil region, Zakarpattia region, Ivano-Frankivska region, communities that traditionally are helping the territory that has suffered from military action, and they do it all the time.
And let me tell about a couple more of examples. I was impressed in Chernihiv region, the communities which are close to me. I am from Brovary. In one of the communities, they were under blockage. If you remember, when the Russian troops came to Brovary and Chernihiv from the other side. So in fact, they were encircled. They were encircled and they took IDPs. So the agrarians, in spite of shellings by the aircrafts, they went on baking bread and delivering it along the villages. This is how they stood for that and even fed the armed forces of Ukraine being under blockage. And I'm also impressed by Gorgan community and the head of community, Maria Chernenko. I'm really impressed by her. I think that she's a heroine. So this is the Kharkiv region. It's south from Kharkiv city. The orcs, the Russians came there, Rohan village. So it was along the front line. And they first, well, obviously the local residents were hiding. Then they took out the children. There's a lots of stories when in the buses they put the children on the floors of the buses to be able to get out and not to be shelled. And in this way, they covered a huge city of Kharkiv from the south. So the communities were covering bigger cities because the Russian troops, the occupiers, were coming from their side. The most interesting story is when half of the community were occupied, and with bread they went, they covered, and they crossed the side to the other front line side, because they just had the house and their relatives were in the different house on the occupied area, but the village council in on the governmentally controlled area. So this is how they organized that. Together under the shelling, they brought food to the occupied side, to the residents, to the relatives, the parents, the people. They brought it and left the food, and then they came back to the GCA, coming through all of that. And Ivanivske community, maybe you know, closer to Chernihiv region. I will not tell the story for a long time, but this is where in Yahidne the people were taken hostages in the basement of the school. That was just a tragedy. When the village council had told me about that, when they came to their place and they also were threatening to shoot, the person in fact lived through the shooting. But still, the local residents did not show that she is the head of the village council. They did not betray her. So then the local residents were hiding her. In fact, so what is impressive in this situation? That the agrarians and the communities and the people facing such a situation, which was very hard, they were uniting together without any directives, without any organizers, even without the leaders. They were just united. They begin to help each other and counter the occupiers together. The mentality of the Ukrainians definitely has changed. They will never tolerate violence or slavery. They are ready to help each other. Yes, we have collaborators, of course. There were cases of that. But under these conditions, we can find this Ukrainian spirit. This real Ukrainian spirit, even in Kharkiv region, which used to be considered a pro-Russian territory, where there were lots of people who were supporting Russia, especially from that border. They were instantly going there, the relatives from abroad, and Donbass as well, and the west of Ukraine. As for Kilkivske community, they have the mayor of Tereshenko, farmer Tereshenko. He has 2,000 hectares, he's not that big. And he had a farm and also the pig farm. During the first days of the war, the aircrafts came and bombed, shelled the farm. Some of the cattle and animals died, and approximately 100 of cows survived. As they couldn't treat them, of course they had to slaughter them and just gave away meat for free for people to be able at least to eat, because it was impossible to get to Brovary even. He restored the mill and he renovated older, obsolete ways of baking bread, and they delivered bread even to the occupied territory. The volunteers took the vehicles to get there. So he began to do that, though when he was bombed, he was even thinking about a suicide. Unfortunately, now he doesn't get any help, but he is going on working in this community together with the local residents, and the local residents go on helping him. And under these hard conditions, when there were power cuts, they got together to provide the dairy machines. This is how they provided food secure. Thank you, Sergei. I'm very happy that we were able to record this video, a conversation with Sergei Kubach. It's really an incredible story, an incredible conversation. I hope it will be inspiring and will have applications about the stories of the strength of Ukrainian agrarians as well. Do not forget, please remember that the recording of our today's event, our opening event, will appear at our YouTube channel of PITCHUA, as well as the recordings of other materials which were told by Adam Siegel and Josh Weinstock before, and also the recordings of the previous webinars of our educational platform of PITCHUA. And now I'll give the floor to, in fact, Deputy Chief of TCA Product, Spencer Nordwick, and our grant team, and they will tell about the administrative details of the participation in the contest of PITCHUA, and after that, we will answer your questions. So if you've got any questions left during the conversation with Spencer, please leave them in the chat. Spencer?
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you to everyone who's remained with us for the past several hours. This is the final presentation, so hang on, and then we'll jump on to our Q&A. We're really looking forward to your applications and your pitching videos, because there's so many important stories related to this theme that the Ukrainian audience and the international audience need to see and hear. So we're looking forward to some amazing applications under PITCHUA. Before I jump in, I will just remind everyone that everything that I say today is reflective of and is written in the request for applications, right? So those are available, they're linked in, we'll throw it in the chat. They're available on Detector Media. And my number one piece of advice for everyone who is applying is go ahead and read that request for application word for word, read it once, read it twice. The vast majority of all questions that we get related to PITCHUA can be answered if you read the request for applications thoroughly. On that note, I know my colleagues mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions, please provide them in writing to strength@transformua.com. We will collect all the questions in writing, and we will keep a running question and answer list so that way if organizations ask questions that are relevant to other organizations, they can be shared and everyone can learn from each other's questions. All of the TCA staff have been instructed to refer everyone to strength@transformua.com. We will not take questions just because we want to keep this fair and transparent for everyone. So I'm going to jump on to the next slide and really cover some of the key points of the RFA in terms of the competition rules. So my colleagues mentioned earlier, the awards under PITCHUA will be grants issued from the USAID Transformation Communications activity on behalf of USAID. We are anticipating that our grants will be issued as fixed amount awards. And if you don't know what that is, basically what we will do is we will negotiate a budget, we will negotiate the final activity, and we'll work with you to establish fixed milestones. I think my colleague Tanya talked about that earlier today. Those fixed milestones, upon completion, you'll be paid a fixed amount. For example, we might have a milestone that says completion of 4 scripts, and upon completion of those and approval of those scripts, you'll be issued a fixed amount that will be stipulated in the grant agreement. The grant agreement will be governed by U.S. regulations according to AES 303, and we will work with you to make sure that you understand all of those rules and regulations so that way you can successfully implement your grant activity. PITCHUA activities under this call are anticipated to last no longer than 2 years, and the absolute cutoff deadline is January 2026. So we need all of the activities to be completed, broadcast, published online by January 2026 at the very latest, and it would be great to even have some faster turnaround times. Following our PITCHUA, the application process, by the time we sign a grant agreement, it takes some time. In between submission and selection of the final winners of the PITCHUA competition, once we announce the winners, we'll begin negotiating with them. We'll begin verifying all of their budget, collecting additional documentation that we'll talk about. We're anticipating to announce winners on October 20th. So the absolute fastest that we could sign a grant agreement and kick off the beginning of the activity is November 30th, 2023. And more likely, it may be December, January before we actually sign any grant agreements. All of the timing really depends on grantee preparedness and responsiveness. So even if you're a winner, we will have follow-up questions. And if you're able to provide answers to those questions in a timely manner, that makes things move a lot faster. I should highlight that all of the grant activities must demonstrate readiness to begin production of a full project or a pilot, ideally within 6 months after receiving the grant award. The next item, which is also indicated in the RFA, so I encourage you to revisit the RFA. We have a section on messaging limitations. So under PITCHUA, our intention is not to censor content in any case. However, the funding is provided on behalf of the American taxpayers, on behalf of the United States Agency for International Development, and we do have limitations with the type of funding, with the type of messaging that we can fund. And a general rule is that content produced should be appropriate for primetime television and a family audience in Ukraine. So if you would watch this with your children, if you would watch this with a grandparent or an elementary school teacher, it's probably safe. There's a business case for this, and then there's also a compliance case on our end. There is a list in the RFA of all of the messaging limitations that I'll cover right now, but I really encourage you to really think critically about your projects and whether or not you can operate within these limitations. So we sometimes we get grantees who, even after they've signed a grant agreement, after we've discussed these rules many, many times, they struggle with how to address this creatively. It's something that we can work with you, but we do have some hard lines. And issues for special care or consideration, obviously, we do not allow any offensive or derogatory materials. Drugs, alcohol, and smoking, I know Timur already spoke about that, but content should not feature any drug use or excessive alcohol or tobacco use. And use of these substances should never be glorified in the content. So if you need to showcase characters who are smoking cigarettes, that's certainly something that we can consider and work with. And if you're selected for phase 2 under doctoring, that's something that you could bring up with your Hollywood expert. The next item that I really want to highlight and underscore is profanity. Content should not include any vulgar language that includes cursing or usage of swear words that can be perceived as offensive in any part of the country. So again, this is something that you can work with your international experts on. We'll certainly work with you. You know, if we if we issue an award for your project, we'll work with you on creative solutions. But profanity is a hard line for us. So you should think really critically about whether or not your project would be appropriate for this type of funding. The next item is discrimination, sexism, racism, or bigotry. So content should not display characters, dialogue, or scenarios that reflect stereotypes or negative perceptions of any race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, etc. So I believe Timur touched on this earlier, but if the purpose of the program is to challenge these stereotypes or negative perceptions, it needs to be handled in a delicate way, and we can work with you to do so. Violence. Content should not feature excessive violence. Attempts should be made to limit the display of blood, gore, and weapons. Sexuality. Content should not feature nudity or strong sexual situations. Content should not discuss issues of family planning or abortion. And women in particular should not be represented in a highly sexualized manner. So definitely take that into consideration as you're developing your concepts and your applications. Promotion. So content should not promote a particular organization or a company. So if a company or an organization is going to be included, highlight that. We can work through it. But again, the intention of the PITCHUA funding is not to promote a particular organization or company. As far as tone goes, content should not feature a negative or divisive tone. So content really should focus on solutions to challenges and not only highlighting or reinforcing problems. And Alex earlier talked about looking toward the future, looking toward Ukraine's future, and I think that aligns with this tone limitation. Establishment clause, that basically means that content should not demonstrate preference to a particular religion or religious interpretation over any other. So if your activity is going to feature religious activities or activities involving religious holidays, highlight that. We can work with you to address it. Partisan, so content may not promote or support a political party over another. We need to remain neutral. So think about that. Think about that in your content design. Think about who you're potentially involving in that content. We want to remain nonpartisan, and that's something important. And then finally, military or law enforcement involvement. Funding may not contribute to pay active military or law enforcement personnel, such as the production team or actors. And content should not be targeted to assist any military or law enforcement, such as raising funds or recruiting. So the United States and the American people definitely stand by Ukraine, and we have other avenues to address this, but it is a limitation within our funding where we are not fundraising or recruiting. So these are things to keep in mind, think them through, and definitely flag that in your application if it's going to be an issue, and we can have our Hollywood experts work with you during the doctoring stage. So as far as eligible organizations, there is a list of eligibility requirements in the RFA. Please refer to that list. I'll touch on it quickly because I know we've been sitting in this presentation for several hours today. But just a note that applicants must be registered in accordance with Ukrainian law, and there is a list indicated in the RFA. I won't read those out. The next slide touches on other eligibility requirements. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Applicants may only submit one application per organization under this RFA. So as part of the applications, you will be required to specify the ownership structure. And so you might be asking, can I just register as multiple organizations, multiple different companies to increase my chances and submit more ideas? And ultimately, we will be looking at those ownership structures. If we see that the company is owned by the exact same people, you have the exact same personnel, that will raise a red flag, and we would need to consult our compliance department. So please do not do that. Please be honest with your submission. One application per organization, and those organizations should genuinely be different. Can previous PITCHUA applicants or winners apply? So if you have previously submitted an application and participated under PITCHUA competitions in the past, welcome back. Let's say you were unsuccessful in your previous pitching, you are absolutely eligible, and you can even resubmit the same or a similar concept as long as it reflects the current theme of the RFA and you're adjusting it to the current realities in Ukraine. For winners of PITCHUA competitions, follow-on awards for PITCHUA 3 and PITCHUA 4 Media Matters winners are not eligible under this RFA. So if you received a grant to develop season 1 of a TV series, you cannot develop season 2 of the series under this competition structure. However, you are eligible to submit entirely new concepts for consideration. So please apply. We encourage that, but no follow-on awards. Again, no short films, short one-off documentaries, podcasts, or radio programs. And it's really important as part of the PITCHUA process. I think I was definitely excited to hear Josh and Adam speak earlier about the pitching process and our entire pre-production, production, post-production phase. Part of this is definitely a collaborative effort with TCA, and we want to make sure that we start with projects from the very beginning. So projects should not be in production at the time of application. The next slide. Another eligibility requirement is that your organization needs to demonstrate successful past performance. So you may be asking, what if I'm a brand new organization? If I was applying as a brand new organization to demonstrate successful past performance, I might want to make sure that I have personnel who have really strong CVs and backgrounds. And even if it's not, maybe it's my first film or television series under this company, I would want to demonstrate that I have the right personnel and organizational structures in place to be successful. We must demonstrate established outreach capacities with linkages to the beneficiary groups, linkages to your target audience, potentially distribution channels, and that there will be an area in the application to demonstrate that. Every single winner will be evaluated and must demonstrate sound management in terms of financial, administrative, and technical policies and procedures. We need to make sure that there are safeguards and internal controls just to prove that you're able to responsibly manage funding from USAID. So as part of the process, I'll talk about the required documentation shortly, but we will have several screening procedures in place. Everyone will be required to sign a certain set of certifications, which are located in Annex F of the RFA. And I do want to just note that this is an equal opportunity. So once you submit an application, TCA will compile a panel of international and local experts who are going to review every single application and every single pitching video in full. Those panelists will be screened to make sure that they don't have any conflict of interest or relationships with any of the applicants and that they are neutral parties. And every single application, again, will be evaluated against the set merit review criteria that's in the RFA. So section 5, I think, is probably one of the most important sections of the RFA. It's the merit review criteria, the scoring that Alex touched on earlier. And everybody's going to be scored on those points and only those points. So those criteria that are listed, everyone will be scored against that and nothing else. I will note that faith-based and community groups will receive equal opportunity for funding, except for faith-based organizations whose objectives are for discriminatory and religious purposes and whose main objective of the grant is of a religious nature. So religious organizations, you are absolutely invited to apply, but the content cannot be religious in nature. There's a list of ineligible organizations also in the RFA. Those include those who have misused USAID funds in the past, political parties, groups, or institutions, or their subsidiaries and dependents, organizations that advocate or promote anti-democratic policies or illegal activities. If we receive any supplemental information from USAID concerning individuals or groups that are prohibited, if your organization appears in a government database that actively excludes you from receiving US funds, you will not be eligible. If you decide to not submit all of the certifications and you refuse to sign them, not eligible. And then military, law enforcement, or intelligence organizations are not eligible. The funding pool, for the next slide, we have a total pool of up to $1.2 million. I'll have the presenter jump on the next slide. Not sure if I'm frozen or not. Great. We have a total funding pool of up to $1.2 million. The average range is anticipated to be between $50,000 and $100,000, and the absolute maximum funding, which will be an exception, is $200,000. You are strongly encouraged to seek third-party contribution or your own resources as part of the entire activity budget. So in the table on Annex A, which is the application form, we have, for the first stage, we've required only a very simplified budget table. So we wanted to keep things simple for everyone during phase one. And basically what we're asking for is for you to include the amount that you're requesting from TCA, USAID, the amount that you're going to utilize from your own resources or third-party resources, the total production budget, and the budget per episode, if that's relevant, and then definitely include who the third-party contributors are if you are using third-party contributions. So during phase two, so phase one, everybody submits their application, their pitching videos. We narrow it down to a shortlisted group of applicants who will undergo doctoring. And during phase two, you will also be required to submit a full detailed budget. So we'll provide you at that time with a detailed budget template in Excel, and you'll need to provide line item details for the entire project. So this is going to include labor, which position, how many hours per position, why, what's the justification for those hours? So what will those people be doing? Information on any materials, rentals, transportation, any service provided under the grant, essentially. So we're going to need a high level of detail. We will invite all of the shortlisted applicants to attend a budgeting workshop to help them complete the detailed budget. So at this stage, we're only asking you to fill in this table. However, in this table, please do not simply estimate or guess an appropriate budget, right? You should begin compiling your entire pre-production, production, and post-production budget now. You should begin obtaining quotes, save those quotes and the research that you conduct on pricing, because all the winners will be required to provide proof of where they obtain their pricing. They'll be required to provide proof that pricing is reasonable, that it's consistent with their existing policies and practices, and as relevant that they might have even competed for those services. So when you're compiling your budget and your estimates, do a really detailed job right now, even though we're not asking for a full Excel sheet for phase one. Go ahead and track your budget costs in whatever currency, but if you are budgeting in hryvnia, save the exchange rates that you're using to convert the pricing to US dollars. So if you're using OANDA or the National Bank exchange rate, include the rate and the date that you converted over to US dollars. Take screenshots, do your homework now. Definitely do not complete this table and just mark $100,000, $125,000, $50,000. Those round numbers are going to tell us that you probably didn't do your homework and you might not be prepared to receive the USAID funding. So definitely budget now, include those costs now. I should note that our grantees will receive VAT exemption. We'll work with the grantees upon award to be listed for VAT exemption. So do not include VAT in your budget at this point. The next slide, I just want to highlight about the costs and what we can pay for, what we can't pay for under PITCHUA. And as a general rule of thumb, all costs need to be reasonable, allowable, and allocable. And that's true for all USAID funding. So what does reasonable mean? It means within standard market and within standard market prices, within typical operating practices of your organization. You can demonstrate that it is, competitive pricing, right? Allowable, it falls within the USAID regulations of what we can and cannot pay for. So we'll cover some of the ineligible or unallowable expenses in a minute. And then allocable. So that means the costs must be tied to the actual grant activity. So let's say you wanted to budget for transportation and you had 20 days that you needed to go between Kyiv and whatever your filming site was over 6 months. We could not pay for 6 months of vehicle rental if you're not using that vehicle every single day for the grant. So we would only allocate the proportional amount to the grant budget. So it needs to be tied to the grant activity. Reasonable management costs can be included. So if you have a project manager, we have very minimal reporting, but we do require active communication throughout grant implementation. So that's something that you can consider. And then costs for promotion are eligible under PITCHUA, but they shouldn't comprise a large portion of the budget. So the PITCHUA funding is intended for content production. If you find it important to include promotion in your budget, certainly you're welcome to include it, and we'll consider that during evaluation and maybe even during negotiation, but it should not be a large promotional budget or a large proportion of your total budget. Ineligible expenses, I'm not going to read them all. They're listed in the RFA. Read them word for word. Generally, we don't see ineligible expenses pop up in grant budgets for the PITCHUA competition, but please do read through them. So I want to go over all of the required documentation, and phase 1 is what we're in right now. So all applicants are required to submit the following documentation, and we really try to minimize the amount of paperwork at this stage. So the first item is Annex A. It's the fully completed application. And on the Google Drive, which we have a link to the RFA, you'll find the RFA, and then you'll find a set of annexes. And we included Annex A in Word format for your convenience. The final submission of Annex A will be electronic via a Google form, but go ahead and work in the Word document, and then you can just copy and paste the information from Annex A into that Google form. That way you won't lose your work. It'll help with translation. Because as a reminder, we do require all of the Annex A information to be translated into English by you. So use a translator as necessary. We will, in a few weeks, have a workshop that goes question by question for Annex A. The next item is the video pitch, which Adam and Josh touched briefly on, and we encourage you to check out the YouTube video and workshop from previous years. You'll be required to upload an extract from the Unified State Register of Legal Entities, Individual Entrepreneurs, and Public Associations. In the annexes, there's also Annex E. It's a letter certifying that you do not have any real or perceived conflict of interest with Chemonics or TCA. If by chance you do have a conflict of interest with Chemonics or TCA, please write to us. Notify us, and we will make decisions accordingly. So if by chance you're a close friend of someone who works at Chemonics or TCA, a relative, a former colleague, write to us, and we will provide you with additional information. It does not necessarily exclude you from submitting an application, but we will take additional precautions to make sure that the competition remains fair. So please disclose those. Don't just sign the annex. If you have a conflict of interest, please disclose it. And then resumes of key personnel or creative portfolios, those need to be submitted in English language. And note that there's not a page limit to this. So this is an opportunity for you to really shine, especially if you're a brand new organization. My advice personally would be to make sure that your CVs and your creative portfolios are really strong to demonstrate that you have relevant capacity. So that's phase one. After phase one, we'll have our evaluation committee. We'll narrow it down and shortlist to approximately, we're anticipating about 25 total applicants. And we'll publish that all on Detector Media on the PITCHUA landing page on Detector Media. So during phase two, you'll undergo the doctoring session, you'll attend a Jesse workshop, we'll have a budgeting workshop. So there will be a lot of additional sort of educational opportunities for you during phase two. And at the end of the phase, what we will do is we'll have you revise your Annex A. You'll take into account what you learned and worked on during doctoring. You'll revise your Annex A. You will upload a budget and Excel template, which is Annex B. We'll provide that to all of the shortlisted applicants, and we'll go over it in the workshop. You'll be required to sign the certifications, upload a financial report from last year, an ownership structure document, a first page of a passport, and then we will ask you to upload relevant organizational policies and procedures. So at this stage, what we'll do is we'll begin sort of screening our applicants to make sure that they have the organizational capacity to effectively absorb this USAID funding and be able to implement compliantly. So we'll ask you to provide financial policies, personnel policies, and other relevant policies and procedures. If you don't have them, we may work with you to establish them. Every organization is at a different place, so we'll look at your individual application and where you're at and determine whether or not you're eligible for award. You'll upload a copy of the legal charter and then a self-assessment form that we'll provide to all of the shortlisted applicants. So that self-assessment form really asks a lot of questions about your financial safeguarding, your accounting capacities, and things like that. Following announcement of winners, we will ask for budget verification documents. So again, this is why start doing your homework now, because with that full detailed budget, every single line item, we're going to be potentially asking for a budget verification document to prove that that pricing is reasonable, it's within market standards, it's within your standard operating procedures. And then we'll also work with you to develop what the actual milestones of the grant activity are for. So that will happen. We'll require those within 4 weeks of announcing the winners. If you are organized, it makes the process to getting to award and signing a final grant agreement a lot faster. Ultimately, USAID will provide approval for every single grant. So after we negotiate everything, we'll submit your activity to USAID for approval. Once they approve, then we'll sign a grant agreement with you. So I do have just a few quick tips that I want to go over, and then we'll jump into question and answer. Thanks so much for your attention so far. But like I said, read the RFA multiple times. And I would encourage your entire team to read it through once or twice, so that way you really understand all of the rules. The merit review criteria, which are listed in section 5, so that included concept, message, design and approach, target audience and distribution, past performance, and personnel experience. Those are really the key to success. So our panel of adjudicators are going to have those merit review criteria, and they're going to have every sentence related to those merit review criteria on a scoring rubric. And so typically when you receive 100 different applications, those that make it easy for you to understand, does it correspond to the merit review criteria? Can I award it points? Those that make it really easy and obvious tend to score higher, at least in my experience when I've submitted grant applications in the past. So act as your own evaluator. I would encourage you to take a look at your pitching video, take a look at your Annex A, right? And take a look at the merit review criteria and try to score it. Find out, have you obviously answered every single question? Does it clearly address every single item in the merit review criteria? That's how you're going to maximize your points. and it's definitely a worthwhile exercise to act as your own evaluator. State the obvious. So don't assume that the panel can make those linkages between the merit review criteria and your application. Be very obvious and clear. And then be honest with yourself. Think about, can you comply with the messaging limitations? Does your project actually fit the PITCHUA Plus theme? Or are you trying to kind of fit it in the box in order to receive funding? So Adam and Josh touched on that already, but really think and be honest with yourself. And if you can't comply with the messaging limitations, maybe it's really important for characters to use a lot of profanity in your particular content. That's great. We wish you well, but it probably won't work out for PITCHUA funding. Annex C is a full checklist of all of the documentation. So that's your guide to completion. Take out that Annex C, check it off, make sure that you've got everything organized so that way there's no surprises when you're ready to submit your application. We do have a question and answer document. So when we receive emailed questions, we will circulate those relevant questions to everyone so that way it's fair. We're accepting questions until August 4th, and we'll be publishing the question and answers on a rolling basis. So there's a link in the RFA, there's a link on Detector Media, in one of the articles on Detector Media, and we're also compiling a links article that's going to be posted on the Detector Media site as well. But check that frequently. We don't anticipate new questions and answers following August 4th, but just check it. Budget with higher accuracy, right? Inflating costs, that's going to be a red flag. So we do, this is, I think, is our 5th iteration of PITCHUA. We have a solid understanding of pricing and market pricing and production pricing. So please do not inflate. We will notice, and it will be a red flag for us. Finally, don't forget the bonus points. So there is a 10-point bonus points for reach. And that says the degree to which the application presents a comprehensive and feasible plan to utilize its content to promote dialogue through events, screenings, discussion groups, or other innovative formats that will engage Ukrainians and or the international community. So think about that. Think about creative solutions. We're interested in providing bonus points for you. So don't forget that element of the competition. We will hold a question and answer session on August 1st at 3 p.m. We'll publish a link on the Detector Media PITCHUA landing page. So keep an eye out for that. And during that session, we will address a lot of the administrative questions, and we'll go line by line through the application, through Annex A, so that way everyone understands exactly how to fill that out. So thank you so much for all of your attention. And I think we're going to jump into a question and answer session now.
Thank you, Spencer. I would also suggest our applicants, potential applicants, that they don't rush with applying, but wait until the Q&A period is over. I
would advise the applicants not to submit their applications because they have time till the 14th of August and there are no bonus points for submitting them before others. Just wait until we publish all the questions and answers, and then we will conduct an additional meeting on the 1st of August. So if you submit it after the 4th of August, I'm sure you will get more additional important information and the answers for the questions. And after the 4th of August, you will be able to submit the better prepared application. So don't be hasty, but don't do that during the last possible moment. Though, according to the tradition, lots of the applications are given during the last 5 minutes. But it may take place that something will be wrong with your internet and it will not be uploaded. So those are my advice.
So Spencer, how do we go through the questions? Do we have other grants team members join us to take us through?
Sure, this is a good time actually to introduce two of my colleagues that work on the grants team. So Svetlana Repik and Maria Ishenko. They'll help with the question and answers along with Alex and his colleagues from the social impact content team.
Maria, Svetlana.
Maria, Svetlana.
So we can cover maybe some questions that arose during our meeting today. And one of the questions was about, wait a second, I will find.
And Maria, go ahead and you can speak Ukrainian because I think there's less of us.
Okay.
Okay, the first question was, we were asked whether there are any sociological researches about deoccupied territories. As far as I understand, the participants would like to use them to submit and define the idea according to which they could develop their own idea. So we have such researchers, we will disseminate them, and we could also provide you with the links in the document where we have Q&A, and you will be able to look through them and use them for your project. Then there was the question about the form for the subscription of the news for the project. So we provided the answers in the chat. You can click on the Q&A function in Zoom, and there is the link to Google form through which you'll be able to, in fact, subscribe, and you will get the news emailing about PITCHUA.
At the same time, we really encourage people to frequently check the Detector Media site in case we publish things more frequently. We won't be spamming people with too many emails, so just maybe check that Detector Media site probably once a week is what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. And also the link for Detector Media was provided in Q&A chapter in Zoom. One more question, whether the format of TV shows used. Well, in fact, you can look at RFI and in the annexes of this event on funding, and it is mentioned what should be the format of the content. This could be scripted series, including animation, many episodes, multi-episode reality shows, discussions, and also educational or entertainment shows, YouTube shows, or full-length films, including animation. So we will give the preference to the formats which can be fully launched and developed considering the conditions in Ukraine. And this content should be created for and accessible for Ukrainian audience. And please pay attention to the chapter 3A of the request for application RFI document, where we mention that the project of transformation communication will not provide grant for one episode short films up to 40 minutes. One episode short movies up to 40 minutes, podcasts or radio shows. In fact, this is the only restriction or limit which you should comply with. As for the formats, that is why, again, as Spencer said, please read carefully RFA and you will get the answers for all of your questions. Okay, is it possible to submit the application for the producers who are cooperating with other team members by separate contracts, but they are not hired officially? In Chapter 3A, it is allowed to say that if the private entrepreneurs are submitting the application, they need to provide the organizational structure to confirm their organizational capacities. That's what Spencer mentioned, in fact. When each organization will be assessed according to the capabilities to use the money of the grant provided properly, using all of their administrative and managerial resources. That's it.
So if I was an individual entrepreneur, like maybe the organization who asked this question, I would want to make sure that I could demonstrate that I have policies and procedures in place to hire people on a short-term basis. Maybe I would want to demonstrate that I've done this in the past, that I've hired people on a short-term basis, and maybe I just don't maintain long-term employees. I would want to show that I work with an accounting organization to manage my funds, things like that. So think about that as you're applying.
Maybe anybody else would like to pose a question now using the mic, loud. As far as I understand, we have such an opportunity and the function to raise the hand, and then you will get an opportunity to ask the question directly, communicating with Alex and Spencer. And we can also look through the questions which were sent before the beginning of our opening event. The question which I remember was about whether the debutant film director can submit his application. I've already answered it during my presentation. The film director can be a debutant who is the member of the shooting crew as well, but please pay attention to the fact that among the assessment criteria, we have the previous experience of the team. So if all of you are debutants, of course, you will not have previous experience. So please, you need to create the whole team to show that you have such experience. And if the film director is debutant, it's okay. And it will be his or her chance to make this debut. Okay, we also had the question about the cooperation with other, for instance, companies. If there is a producer, and the producers and companies are Ukrainian and American, when other parties are involved for the development of the product, of the final content. So we also answered already that the main thing that the organization, the institution, or the private entrepreneur who is submitting an application for this competition should be registered in Ukraine according to Ukrainian legislation, but it is not prohibited to involve other partners from Ukraine or other countries to implement the activity planned within our project. Other partners, when you say other partners, you mean as co-workers or co-employees and members in the team. Within the team, there can be other partners. Because if we are speaking about the involvement of additional sources of funding, and you go to other international funds and foundations and they are ready to provide you this funding, do not forget that the grant from USAID has certain requirements which you need to comply with. So if other foundation also has its requirements, just think how you will be able to combine those requirements. I don't say it's impossible. I would say it is. But the most important thing for you to remember that you will have to combine the implementation of and compliance with requirements from different sources of funding. We also had new questions in chat. Sergei would like to clarify whether there are any limitations for those who used to be winners before, whether they will be able to submit their applications again, because the presentations were speaking about the winners of the third and fourth iterations. Well, it was mentioned about the competitions conducted from TCA. The competitions which were taking place before the third and the fourth, TCA was not conducting them. It was done by a different project of USAID, so RFA doesn't add anything about that. Spencer, would you like to add anything?
Yes, the RFA does not exclude those. So take a look at the theme. If you think that it would be competitive, certainly you are eligible to apply.
Also, we have one more question. Can we submit a historical feature series, whether it can be found among the topics? RFI doesn't have any limits of the format or genre. It's okay. Dear colleagues, dear participants, our listeners, if you've got any questions left. Yes, I can see one more question. Can we involve a different production for the part of production process, and which documents do we need for that? Maybe.
I didn't understand that question, Alex. So if you can answer, go ahead. If not.
If there is one production company that gets a grant, but then they also want to involve another production company, like a Ukrainian production company, and do a co-production, how does that spin out under?
What I would suggest, if you are planning to go that route, send us a direct email to strength@transformua.com, and we can evaluate whether those costs would be allowable. So what we wouldn't want is one company receiving an award and then essentially procuring all of the services from another production house. That's not the point of PITCHUA. So definitely reach out, and we can address that via email.
And also, you should mention whether in your case, this other production will have its own funds, which you may need as an addition to what you can get from us as a grant. I don't see any other questions left. So if you've got any questions, you have some time and opportunity to pose them.
I would also has his hand up.
Yeah, if someone wants, but я просто хотів зауважити ще раз, що, будь ласка.
Yes, but I just wanted to mention that, please, look at our publications at Detector Media website, because they will show all the news about the contest, and they will have the link to the Google document where we will post the answers for the questions which will come to us through email, because the answer to each question can be known by any potential applicants. And we will not mention who posed this or that question, but the answer will be public and publicly known by for everyone. Okay. Our technical support, could you give an opportunity to Mr. Galimov to pose a question? He raised the hand. Yes, hello, if you hear me. Thank you for the wonderful opening event. I have the question about the further screenings of our project. Maybe you answered that and I just missed that. Do we need to confirm by some documents any deals with the TV channels or YouTube channels about the screening of our product? Or do we just mention in the application where we can see our product can be aired?
The RFA does not require any documentation regarding screening or distribution. However, there are specific questions in the application where you detail your plans. If necessary, we may request supplemental information, but at this time, we're not requiring you to, for example, upload confirmation letters. If you have those, you're certainly welcome to include them, as an annex to your application. But at this time, we're not requiring them. We are operating under the assumption that all of the information that you provide in the application is true. So if you say that you have distribution channels, we'll verify that later, but at this stage, we don't require additional documents. I hope that answered.
Дякую.
Чи є ще в когось запитання?
Do we have any more questions?
Хто ще не зайшов в нашу Google форму для того, щоб залишити свої контакти, щоб отримувати?
If you have not entered your contacts into our Google form to get updates on PITCHUA and news, please do it now. The link to this Google form is in chat and in Q&A. You have that Google form also in the answered questions for Q&A. Tomorrow at Detector Media, we'll have published materials, all RFA documents, all Google forms. Everything will come in one set, if that helps. As far as I understand, all questions have been answered, and we can thank all the participants, and we can wish you good preparation, interesting applications. Don't forget, our YouTube channel will have recording of our opening session, opening webinar. If your colleagues were not able to join live, they can watch. Invite them to watch this recording on YouTube. Invite them to read all the documents that we publish at Detector Media webpage. Thank you for joining us today. We thank colleagues, we thank guests, we thank the team of our technical support, and we thank our interpreters, and I wish all of us calm evening, peaceful night, glory to Ukraine.